U.S. government grants patents for an anti-gravity craft that also alters the space-time around it. If Nikola Tesla were alive today, I'm sure he would be happy to see this. This is by Steve McCamley on Collective Spark. It wasn't long ago when government agencies and scientists would simply reject even talking about inventions that defy our known laws of physics, but things are changing fast because science is progressing. And if there's one thing that's constant, it's change. Change is even constant in physics. A great example I'd like to use of this prominent physicist, Lord Kelvin, who stated in the year 1900, quote, "There is nothing new to be discovered in physics now. All that remains is a more and more precise measurement," end quote. Well, it wasn't long after his statement when Einstein published his paper on special relativity. Einstein's theories challenged the accepted framework of knowledge at the time and forced the scientific community to open up to an alternative view of reality. A paper titled "Outside the Box: Space and Terrestrial Transportation and Energy Technologies for the 21st Century," written by Professor Theodore Lauder of the University of New Hampshire, reviews the developments of anti-gravity research in the United States and emphasizes how, quote, "research activity seemed to disappear by the mid-1950s," end quote. It then looks into recently reported scientific findings and witnesses' testimonies, quote, "that show us that this research and technology is alive and well and very, very advanced. The revelations of findings in this area will alter dramatically our 20th century view of physics and technology and must be considered in planning for both energy and transportation needs in the 21st century." As far back as 2005, patent 6,960,975 was granted on November 1st to Boris Wolfson of Huntington, Indiana. It described a space vehicle propelled by a superconducting shield, which alters the curvature of space-time outside the craft in a way that counteracts gravity. The device builds on a claim by the Russian physicist Eugene Podkletnov that superconductors can shield the effects of gravity. The patent filed by the U.S. Navy in 2016 describes a design for a craft as follows, quote, "The craft using an internal mass reduction device comprises of an inner resonant cavity wall, an outer resonant cavity, and microwave emitters. The electrically charged outer resonant cavity wall and the electrically insulated inner resonant cavity wall form a resonant cavity. The microwave emitters create high-frequency electromagnetic waves throughout the resonant cavity, causing the resonant cavity to vibrate in an accelerated mode and create a local polarized vacuum outside the outer resonant cavity wall." Well, you lost me back at the bakery, but I'm still going to read this. Now, shortly after the patent for the hybrid craft was approved in 2018, the inventor Salvatore Cesar Pais presented another related paper, quote, "Room temperature superconducting system for use on a hybrid aerospace undersea craft," end quote. Wow. At the 2019 American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Sci-Tech Forum in San Diego this past January. In the paper, Pais writes that, quote, "The achievement of room temperature superconductivity, RTSC, represents a highly disruptive technology capable of a total paradigm change in science and technology," end quote. And he adds that its military and commercial value is considerable. Now, Salvatore Cesar Pais received the PhD degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering from Case Western Reserve University, Cleveland, Ohio, USA. He was a NASA Graduate Research Fellow with the NASA Glenn Lewis Research Center, Cleveland. He was with NAVAIR, NAWCAD, NASPAX, Patuxent River, Maryland, USA. He was a general engineer in advanced concepts analysis with Northrop Grumman Aerospace Systems, where he was involved in defense-oriented work. He is currently with the Department of Defense, Department of the Navy, Strategic Systems Programs, Washington, D.C., where he is involved in a permanent civilian capacity. He has advanced knowledge of theory analysis and modern experimental and computational methods in aerodynamics, along with an understanding of air vehicle and missile design, especially in the domain of hypersonic power plant and vehicle design. Furthermore, he has experience in electro-optics and emerging quantum technologies, particularly the laser power generation arena and high-energy electromagnetic field generation, besides condensed matter physics, such as the emerging breakthrough field of room temperature superconductivity, as related to advanced field propulsion. As a relevant aside, it's important to stress the fact that his work at SSP has absolutely no bearing on the subject of the paper at hand. Okay. Now, the capabilities described in the paper should certainly sound familiar to anyone who's been following the Navy UFO stories over the last several years. Quote, "It's possible to envision a hybrid aerospace undersea craft, HAUC, which can function as a submersible craft capable of extreme underwater speeds, lack of water skin friction that is, and enhanced aerial underwater stealth capabilities, nonlinear scattering of RF and sonar signals. This hybrid craft would move with great ease through the aerospace water mediums by being enclosed in a vacuum plasma bubble sheath due to the coupled effects of electromagnetic field-induced air-water particle repulsion and a vacuum energy polarization." These types of technologies or potential technologies seem to be bringing up what's known as warp drive or the Alcubierre drive, warp drive. Now, the concept involves basically placing a craft within a space that is moving faster than the speed of light. Therefore, the craft itself does not have to travel at the speed of light from its own type of propulsion system. It's easier to understand if you think in terms of a flat escalator in an airport. The escalator moves faster than you are walking, and in this case, the space around the ship would be moving faster than the ship could fly, keeping all the matter of the ship intact. Therefore, we can move faster than light in a massless cloud of space-time. So rather than exceed the speed of light alone in the craft, the spacecraft would leap along distances by contracting space in front of it and expanding space behind it, and this would result in traveling faster than light. Physicist Miguel Alcubierre was the first that we know of to identify this possibility. He described it as remaining still on a flat piece of space-time inside a warp bubble that was made to move at superluminal, that's faster than light, velocity. We must not forget that space-time can be warped and distorted, and it can be moved. But what about moving sections of space-time that are created by expanding space-time behind the ship and by contracting space-time in front of the ship? Here's another great paper on faster-than-light technology regarding altering the quantum vacuum by legendary physicist Dr. Eric Davis. The key is developing technology that can alter space-time, but also detecting that space-time, or as some like to call it, ether or dark matter in some cases, so it can be engineered. Ether. Let's call it ether. The ancient Greeks called it ether. Because space is not empty. It's full of electromagnetic waves. Now, a similar concept has also recently was illustrated by mathematician James Hill and Barry Cox at the University of Adelaide in Australia. They published a paper in the Journal Proceedings of the Royal Society of Mathematical and Physical Science. Dr. Alcubierre says, by creating a warp bubble that expands space on one side of a spaceship and contracts it in the other, the spaceship will be pushed away from the Earth and pulled toward a distant star by space-time itself. But do these technologies actually exist? The defense patent applications are quite intriguing, and it means that the Navy is actually taking the concept quite seriously. But is there any evidence at all of their existence? It depends on what you consider to be evidence. We have statements from previously retired directors of Lockheed Martin aerospace programs, including the most recently retired, like Steve Justice. So what did Mr. Justice have to say? Well, a lot of things. One of the first statements he made using the To the Stars platform is that when it comes to the technologies he's been around, working with and seen, it would be an understatement to call them revolutionary. He stated that the technologies that him and his team at To the Stars are working on now are the same technologies that are employed by unidentified flying objects. Okay? Quote, in some cases, according to incident reports and interviews with military personnel, these vehicles descended from altitudes higher than 60,000 feet at supersonic speeds only to suddenly stop and hover as low as 50 feet above the ocean. This is what Christopher Mellon, Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary for Intelligence from 1997 to 2002, said. And Justice has said that he has had glimpses of how this type of technology works, and that his current team needs to harvest, quote unquote, these technologies from the Science Division to realize their capabilities. Justice and his team have admitted to having access to materials from these UFOs, wherever they are from and whoever is making them. Quote, over the last 3 months, To the Stars Academy has collected 7 pieces of material from multiple sources to study for the ADAM research project. Each sample represents different elements of potential unidentified aerial phenomenon and how they operate. Now, according to the accompanying provenance documentation, there are 2 classes of samples. Material that was released as the UAP was hovering, and material that makes up parts of the structure of the systems. And according to Justice, the structure and composition of these materials are not from any known existing military or commercial application. They've been collected from sources with varying levels of chain of custody documentation, so we are focusing on variable facts and working to develop independent scientific proof of the material's properties and attributes, and in some cases the manufacturing technology required to fabricate the material is only now becoming available, but the material has been in documented possession since the mid-1990s. We currently have multiple material samples being analyzed by contracted laboratories and have plans to extend the scope of this study. If the claims associated with these assets can be validated and substantiated, then we can initiate work to transition them from being a technology to commercial and military capabilities. On multiple occasions, Justice has spoken of technologies that can alter the space-time metric. The mainstream has picked up on this multiple times, and there's examples on New York Times. Now again, it's unclear because there just isn't any solid proof, although I have no doubt that these technologies exist within the black budget world. After all, the Invention Secrecy Act, written up in 1951, states that patent applications on new inventions can be subject to secrecy orders. These orders can restrict their publication if government agencies believe that their disclosure would be harmful to national security. These days, national security seems to be used to protect elitists and corporate interests, it seems, but that being said, it seems that they do exist if we consider the technological capabilities that have been observed in thousands of cases of UFO sightings and incidents. And this is by the U.S. government grant patents for anti-gravity craft that alter space-time around it, was originally created for collective evolution, is published here under Creative Commons on Collective Spark. So tell me what you think about this. This reminds me of what William Tompkins has been talking about. He passed away a couple of years ago, but he says that we had this technology since the 1950s. You can find his interviews and his speeches on YouTube. One of them is by Carrie Cassidy and Project Camelot, and he talks about the fact that we're already traveling to other planets of our solar system with this all this type of technology, and that he was also, when in his youth, he was a designer for the U.S. Navy aircraft carriers, and that he also designed huge spaceships based on his knowledge of aircraft carriers, designed spaceships for interstellar travel, interplanetary travel. Anyway, tell me what you think about this. This is astonishing, isn't it? If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.